Hello, everyone. I'm your host, Moonlight Graham, and welcome to Episode 8 of Covert and Classified. In the summer of 1936, Hitler had completed a 4-year plan to boost the German military and the domestic economy to be ready for war by 1940. He put Hermann Goering in charge of this project, and he developed a German fat plan to enable Germany to improve the efficiency of its domestic consumption of butter, milk, cream, lard, cheese, bacon, margarine, salad, detergents, candles, linoleum, and paints. The idea was to find substitutes for these oil and fat-based products in case imported sources were cut off when the war started. At the time, whale oil was one of the main ingredients for margarine, and the Germans ate a lot of it. To prepare for war, Hitler felt they needed whale oil and lots of it. In the 2012 book, The Third Reich in Antarctica, the German Antarctic Expedition of 1938 to 1939, author and professor Cornelia Ludeck, who was a professor of science at Hamburg University and co-author of the 2012 book with Colin Summer-Hayes, they state that the Germans had to buy whale oil from Norway before the war started, and they didn't want to rely on Norway for their whale oil anymore. They wanted to produce the oil by themselves. So, Germany began building whaling ships in the late 1930s to search in the southern regions of the ocean for good hunting grounds. At the time, commercial whaling had been decimated in the North Atlantic and North Pacific. German whaling ships were operating far from home, so the idea of establishing an Antarctic base to aid the whaling ships seemed like a good idea. In August of 1936, the German Foreign Office found some unclaimed territory in Antarctica between the Norwegian and British zones, and an expedition to explore and claim this region was put into action. A German ship called the Schwabenland was turned into an icebreaker, and it sailed from Hamburg on December 17, 1938, with a crew of 82 scientists, officers, and enlisted men, as well as 2 Dornier flying boats perched on catapults. The ship reached the Antarctic coastline a month later and began aerial reconnaissance using the flying boats. The mountainous Arctic region had never been explored, and the German scientists named it New Schwabenland after the name of their ship. These flights had 2 purposes. The first was to photograph the area for scientific research and cartography. The second purpose was to simply claim it for Nazi Germany. There is speculation and rumor that this secret mission to secure whale oil for the Third Reich was also there to find a suitable place for a planned secret underground base to house missiles and submarines. This supposed secret underground Nazi base that would be constructed later on was called Base 211 and was rumored to be a massive underground complex as large as a small city. The Schwabenland expedition ended soon after completing their aerial recon of the area with photographic surveys. The ship then began its long trip home on February 5th of 1939. Later on, as the war progressed and it was clear that the Germans were beginning to realize they were going to lose the war, they continued and increased shipping large amounts of supplies and materials to the Antarctic. This seems very odd, since those supplies would seem to be better off being used to help the war effort on the home front. Fast forward to the year 1946, 1 year after World War II ended, the Secretary of the Navy, James Forrestal, sent a naval task force to the Antarctic that included Admiral Nimitz, Admiral Cruzen, and Admiral Byrd. Originally scheduled for a 6-month period, this scientific expedition was officially called the United States Navy Antarctic Development Program and was given the code name Operation High Jump. It was publicly touted to be an expedition to find coal deposits and other valuable resources, as well as being a testing ground for radar instruments and training in Arctic cold environments. But it seems a bit odd that this scientific expedition was comprised of an aircraft carrier, 2 seaplane carriers, 2 destroyers, a submarine, an icebreaker, a tanker, military supply ships, and 25 airplanes, along with 4,700 soldiers, marines, and military personnel, all equipped in full battle gear. On the surface, it looked more like a military invasion force. This was indeed the largest armada ever sent to Antarctica. But whatever their true intentions were, Admiral Byrd and Task Force 68, as it was called, headed out for Antarctica on the 26th of August, 1946, and keep in mind it was supposed to be a 6 to 8 month long mission. What makes this mission even more interesting is that as large as Antarctica is, which by the way is larger than the United States and twice the size of Australia, they chose to head straight for the area that the Germans had supposedly set their whaling operation up back in 1939. Coincidence? In actuality, they were supposedly trying to find the underground base called 211 that the Nazis had been suspected of building during the war. As I mentioned earlier, the Nazis had done a very detailed study of the area and were suspected of still operating there in some capacity after the war had ended. Admiral Byrd, who led this secret mission, was not just a renowned world explorer, but he was also one of the most highly decorated officers in Navy history. He was the youngest Navy officer ever to reach the rank of Rear Admiral by the age of 41. He also was awarded the Medal of Honor, as well as the Navy Cross, the Flying Cross, and the Silver Life-Saving Medal. He also received 22 citations and commendations, including 9 for bravery and 2 for extraordinary heroism. Obviously, he was a great choice to lead such a mission with his experience and knowledge. Admiral Byrd and his Task Force 68 arrived in Antarctica on January 15th of 1947 and started setting up a base of operations they called Little America. While setting up this base, Admiral Byrd took one of the planes up and flew on a recon mission over the Antarctic's icy landscape. During this flight, it was reported that he was missing for 3 full hours in what would become an unusual episode of lost time, but would later be simply explained away as radio failure. It has been brought up that how did Byrd go missing for 3 hours and not run out of gas? But that has never been answered. Only 2 days after arriving in the Antarctic, sailors aboard the ships of the military armada reported seeing strange lights on the horizon and thought it might be another ship. But then the lights shot up and ascended into the sky at a 45-degree angle and at a high rate of speed. The task force's radar crews tried to make contact, but the lights were just out of radar range. But it was just 3 hours later, after the first lights were originally sighted by the sailors, that one of the most controversial and strangest events that surrounded this secret mission would occur. 5 more lights were spotted yet again, and this time they were headed directly for the task force ships. Immediately, battle stations were called, and anti-aircraft guns and 20mm cannons were brought to bear on the strange lights, but no actual effect from their fire was seen. A radio operator of the USS destroyer Bronson apparently gave testimony that strange aircraft were seen flying out of the ocean and began attacking the task force of ships. A lieutenant by the name of John Sayerson would corroborate this claim by saying that the strange aircraft were shooting vertically out of the ocean at high speeds. Planes were launched, and one was shot down and destroyed by an unknown weapon that looked like a ray of light. One of the task force's torpedo boats would burst into flames and sank. According to reports, this would be the first attack of several that would happen over the next 2 weeks, and after the second attack, the task force felt the need to retreat from the area on February 26, 1947. They had only been there a little over a month, but they were now in full retreat headed towards Chile. Once they made port in Chile, the rumors started swirling about disasters and strange events that would cause them to cut short this very expensive expedition. Interestingly, many people believe Admiral Byrd made a number of cryptic comments while he was interviewed by the International News Service correspondent Lee Van Atta aboard the USS Mount Olympus. The article appeared in the March 5, 1947 edition of the Chilean newspaper El Mercurio. The article quoted Admiral Byrd as saying that Admiral Byrd declared today that it was imperative for the United States to initiate immediate defensive measures against hostile regions. The Admiral further stated that he didn't want to frighten anyone unduly, but that it was a bitter reality that in case of a new war, the continental United States would be attacked by flying objects which could fly from pole to pole at incredible speeds. After arriving back in the States, Admiral Byrd was immediately debriefed, and his journals and diary were seized by the government and were immediately classified as top secret. The mission was also classified as top secret, and to this day they are still both classified. Any sailor or military personnel who witnessed the mission's particulars were told to remain silent about it under the threat of being arrested and imprisoned. Admiral Byrd would never speak of Operation High Jump ever again. The Navy would eventually release a list of personnel who were killed during the mission, but they never said how many were killed, and all were listed as accidents. Even more unusual, the bodies were not brought home, but buried there in the Antarctic. On December 1st of 1959, the Antarctic Treaty was signed by 12 nations, and later by many other nations as well, that would prevent anyone from going to the Antarctic without special permission. And even if you do get special permission, you can only go in a few small special designated areas. The rest is completely off limits. It certainly begs the question, why? Since then, there have been many other far-out and UFO-like claims about the mysterious Antarctic landmass. With the melting ice occurring lately, there are many folks who claim to have found objects in the receding ice resembling crashed UFOs, pyramid structures, and large cave entrances to supposed hidden underground bases, all seen with satellite images and Google Earth maps. Could this simply be a case of pareidolia? But who knows? Either way, thanks for watching, and hope you enjoyed this truly strange story about Admiral Byrd and Operation High Jump. I'm Moonlight Graham, and thanks for watching this episode of Covert and Classified. Till next time.